Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivitagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gauramanandi. We're gradually making some progress through Brahma's prayers. As you see on the screen, this is the cover picture from Sri Brahma Samhita, depicting darkness in all directions, very, very dawn of creation, where Brahma has appeared on the lotus flower, from the lotus stem, from the lotus navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. You see below the splashing of the waves of the Garbhodak ocean. And of course there's Krishna playing his flute, and the flute song of Krishna goes into the ear of Brahma and comes out in the form of Kama Gayatri, upon which Brahma meditated and came to become well acquainted with the ocean of truth, and spoke Brahma Samhita, the prayers to Govinda. And much later after that, during the 7th Manu, during one of the days of Brahma, in the 27th Yuga cycle, Krishna appeared in Vrindavan. And Brahma went to visit Krishna in Vrindavan and observe his pastime of killing of Aghasura, a demon. And then he became curious to understand the limits of Krishna's mystic powers. He, of course, had mystic powers, Brahma, derived from Krishna, but what's the limit of Krishna's mystic powers? And so he devised a plan, and Krishna reciprocated and showed him his potencies are unlimited. Mystic power is unlimited. And then Brahma began his prayers, chapter 14. So we've covered up through verse number 29 of chapter 14. And now we're going to do a little review of 15 through 19. It's those of you that have been viewing this consecutively, you've seen it several times. This is probably the last time you'll see. It's just a summarization of those verses 15 through 19, 13 through 29. And what precedes 15 is 1 through 14. Brahma's glorification of the process of bhakti as the only means to understand Krishna, the unlimited, cannot be understood by Gyan process or by the yoga process, by meditation, but by bhakti alone. He then speaks of what he's understood about Krishna through the bhakti process, that Krishna is the source of all avatars, he's the source of all the universes, because he saw the Narayana forms and all the universes. That must have been quite something. He didn't just see the universal form, which is what Arjuna saw. And we know Arjuna's response was, please remove that form. That was the universal form of this universe. What Brahma saw was the universes, plural. Now, how can you see the universes? How can you see one universe? How can you see all? Anyway, it was mind-blowing. So he's appreciating that Krishna is the source of everything. And we're going to hear shortly Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's summary of those prayers, like speaking of bhakti, unmixed bhakti, bhakti mixed with gyan, and so forth and so on. It's hovering around the bhakti topic, but it's bhakti and its different features. And based on bhakti, within its different features, there's different realizations. So we'll continue. After recognizing the unlimited opulences of Krishna, he's now going to express in his prayers what the implication of that is, what the ramification of all of this. Oh, here we go.
Lord Brahma attempts to express the ramifications of the opulence that he has seen Krishna display. He prays to Krishna, "O Lord, I previously was unable to either understand or see you due to the coverings of your own Maya, your illusory energy. But you are the controller of that Maya, and that was proved by Mother Yashoda's seeing the universe within your abdomen. Now, at the present, that universe is externally manifest as your inconceivable energy, and it is therefore all that I perceive. Today, by your manifesting all the cows, cowherd boys, and Vishnu forms who are being worshipped by all living entities, you've demonstrated that the entire creation is your inconceivable potency. And now I'm seeing before me the original form of the unlimited, supreme, absolute truth. To the ignorant, you seem to be of this material world, although it is you who appears as Brahma, the creator, who appears as Vishnu, the maintainer, and as Shiva, the destroyer. To demonstrate that you, the absolute truth, is an unlimited transcendental person, you descend within the universe as avatars, and you take birth among the demigods, sages, humans, animals, and the aquatics. As an avatar, you then, by your spiritual potency, perform your innumerable, inconceivable, mysterious pastimes. Due to you, this entire universe, which, like a dream, is by nature unreal, nevertheless appears real, and thus it covers one's consciousness and assails one with repeated miseries. This universe appears real because it is manifested by the potency of illusion emanating from you, whose unlimited transcendental forms are full of eternal happiness and knowledge. You are the one Supreme Soul, the primeval Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth, self-manifesting, endless and beginningless. You are eternal and infallible, perfect and complete, without any rival, and free from all material designations. Your happiness cannot be obstructed, nor have you any connection with material contamination. Indeed, you are the indestructible nectar of immortality. By the grace of his spiritual master, a jnani can mix bhakti with his jnana. He will then be able to see you as the soul of all souls. He will be able to see you as the super soul of his own self. This vision will allow him to cross the ocean of material existence. For one who has thus realized you, the illusory energy at once subsides, for he is free of the false vision of perceiving anything as separate from you. Seeing you with this vision of knowledge and remaining in knowledge of you, devoid of the false perceptions that are the cause of the existence of the material world, his ignorance and illusion cease. Therefore, through knowledge of you and knowledge of himself as your eternal servant, neither liberation nor bondage have meaning for him, just as day and night have no meaning for one present on the sun planet. How foolish are the jnanis! How foolish are the mayavadis! They are fools because they consider your form as a manifestation of illusion. How foolish are the conditioned souls! Regardless of how intelligent they think themselves as being, they all perceive themselves as their bodies, and they thus fail to see their self as part of you. They are all fools because they reject you, and in so doing, they search for the Supreme Soul outside of your Supreme Personality. How foolish are all of these so-called learned men. O unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees who have added bhakti to their jnana seek you out within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Indeed, how can discriminating persons appreciate the real nature of a rope lying before them until they refute the illusion that it is a snake? My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years.
So, having gone through this several times, and then in the course of going through it, drilling down a little more deeply on the verses in between 15 and 29, it makes it very intelligible. Although, just hearing the first time, the flow is very clear. In the a little summary. Before this section, Brahma declared Krishna is the supreme. He's the source of everything. He's even the source of Narayan. And then Krishna might say in response, well, really? How do you know that? And in this verse, towards the end, this text 29, Atapi te deva padambujam dvaya prasada leshana grahita eva hi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya ekopi chiram vichinvan. I've been speaking a lot during these evening classes about the Hare Krishna movie. Prabhupada quotes this verse in the Hare Krishna movie. Have you seen the Hare Krishna movie? See it again and again. It's available on YouTube now. Yeah. So it's an important verse. If one is favored by even a slight trace, lesha, of the mercy of your lotus feet, padam bhuja dvaya prasada, there we go. What's that? Yeah, sure. You already have it. And now I have it again. We're having a little technical jugglery here, but bear with us. Okay, so atapi te deva. If one is favored by even a trace, a light trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, then even though those that are speculate can't know you, those who are connected with the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, that's this bhakti emphasis, then one can understand, at least to a degree, the greatness of your personality. So that the topic has been from chapter 13. This is 14. Chapter 13, what's the limit of the opulences of the personality of Godhead? the mystic power of the personality of Godhead. What is the limit of your greatness? Well, it's unlimited. And with mercy, then one can begin to understand, but not by speculation. So now comes a transition verse, text 30. Krishna's heard Brahma's prayers, glorifying his unique position as the singularly important Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of all other incarnations, the original form of the Lord. He's understood that. So now he's offering him a benediction. And he asks for, he's very smart, Buri Bhaga. He wants the fortune of just being eternally situated as a devotee, whatever situation Krishna may want to put him in. My dear Lord, I therefore pray to be so fortunate that in this life as Lord Brahma, or in another life, wherever I take birth, I may be counted as one of your devotees. I pray that wherever I may be, among the animal species even, I can engage in devotional service to your lotus feet. Now, this verse is a very nice expression. It's very similar to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's expression in Shikshastaka. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes about this in his songs. You can make me a dog, but in the home of a devotee, so I can have the association of devotees. This is Brahma's way of saying. I'd like to read our Acharya's commentary. There's no purport in the Bhagavatam, but here's commentary. Vishwanath writes, O Brahma, crushed jewel of all knowers of sadhya and sadhana, what is your desire after describing Gyan and Bhakti in your prayers? Carefully consider and pray for the most valuable thing. In Brahma's reply, yes, I have discerned the most auspicious thing of all, Buri Bhaga. Whether I am born as Lord Brahma, or whether I'm born in a low species such as a deer, for many births, whatever birth I have, from the highest to lowest, I pray to take birth as one among your followers, whether advanced or neophyte. In the first verse of this chapter, then this is now a gloss of the entire, everything of what we've up to here, so listen carefully and read it slowly. The very first verse, Brahma expressed the excellence of the Lord's sweetness. In the second and 13th verse, he praised the Lord's power, exhibiting a mixture of bhakti and gyan. In the third verse, that the Gyane Prayasam verse, he concludes that bhakti is superior. In the 8th verse, he shows the supremacy of pure or Kevala bhakti to Krishna. In 27 and 19th verses, he derides Kevala Gyan. In the 4th and 5th verses, Brahma shows the uselessness of Kevala Gyan and the success of Kevala Bhakti. 28 and 29, he discusses Gyan mixed with Bhakti. In verse 24, he discusses Shanta Bhakti. In the 13th verse, he discusses Dasya Bhakti. After this, starting with text 30, this one, from 31, Brahma, having fallen in an ocean of Krishna's sweetness, praises the devotees immersed in the raga of Vatsalya and other intimate relationships. This is the outline of Brahma's prayers. Brahma, saying, I have received mercy, by which I receive knowledge of your powers, by which I have begun worship, by which I have a direct meeting with you. This happened so quickly. Therefore I pray to you. It should be understood that until the end of the chapter, these prayers are a form of offering respects, ultimately to the form of Krishna. And that's it for text 30. And now we're going to cover 3 more verses, 31, 2, and 3. At this point, this is Vishwanath's comment. At this point, Brahma falls into an ocean of Braja Prem. So he's swooning about the Brijbasis. Oh, Almighty Lord, how greatly fortunate are the cows and ladies of Vrindavan, the nectar of whose breast milk you have happily drunk to your full satisfaction, taking the form of their calves and children. This is during that time that Brahma was gone, looking in the cave. A whole year passed on earth, and Krishna, in those forms of calves and children, engaged with their mothers and the cows. All the Vedic sacrifices performed from time immemorial up to the present day have not given you as much satisfaction. Krishna's attracted to the love of the residents of Vrindavan more than Krishna is attracted to Vedic hymns and performance of yagyas and so forth. Those are Vedic sacrifices are from him, so it's pleasing, but not anything like the satisfaction he derives from being with the residents of Vrindavan. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in his commentary, as an unqualified person, I have prayed to become your devotee. It is your will to fulfill it. It is unsuitable for me to pray for the elevated stage of your devotees engaged in spontaneous attraction of Vatsalya and other moods. I can only praise them. This is expressed in 2 verses. The cows and gopis of Braja are extremely fortunate. And Jiva Goswami writes, I should remain satisfied in myself, but you seek to serve me, but you are Brahma, and my people are cowherds. How is it possible to associate with them? Fearing such response by the Lord, he replies with this verse, their glory is greater than all others' glory. He gives specific examples to illustrate, and by that indicate his own desire. And Sanatan Goswami writes, Brahma prays to have bhakti similar to that of the people of Braja, or to serve their lotus feet. Since everything should end in sweetness, with the intention of praising the Lord by describing their greatness, he praises them in 10 verses. And in Krama Samdarbha, Jiva Goswami comments, all the Vedic sacrifices have not given you such satisfaction. That is your greatness. You remain there at all times among those inhabitants. So that's 31. This is a plunge into Braja Prem by Brahma. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men, and all the other inhabitants of Brajabhumi. There is no limit to their good fortune, because the absolute truth, the source of transcendental bliss, the supreme eternal Brahman, has become their friend. This is the Sakya Rasa, is now being glorified after the Vatsalya Rasa. Vishwanath comments, after praising the Brajavasis with Ragatmika Vatsalya Prem, Brahma, in praising those with Ragatmika Sakya Prem, praises all those relishing intimate relationships with the Lord. He repeats the phrase, Aho Bhagyam, twice, to indicate his extreme bliss and astonishment. And Jiva Goswami writes, the description of your glories in the spiritual parts of the Vedas is not actually suitable. Understanding that his glories are completely different, Brahma speaks in astonishment. And there's extensive commentary with all the Sanskrit terms in the verse here. Jiva Goswami writes, how fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd man, and all the other inhabitants of Brajabhumi. There is no limit to their good fortune because Krishna gave them prema, which is the highest bliss, eternal and complete. And our final verse for this evening is 33, which reads, yet, even though the extent of good fortune of these residents of Vrindavan is inconceivable, we, 11 presiding deities of the various senses headed by Lord Shiva, are also most fortunate, because the senses of these devotees of Vrindavan are the cups through which we repeatedly drink the nectarian, intoxicating beverage of the honey of your lotus feet. Now remember this, Atapi Devi Padam Pajam Haro. So he's saying when it gets even a little, now he's expressing his glorification of the Brijbasis, who by their spiritual senses, he and the other presiding deities of the senses are able to experience the nectar of Krishna's feet. So it's there's interesting commentary, and tomorrow evening I'm going to go for a deeper plunge in this one verse, just this one verse, discussing Virat Rupa and Sankhya philosophy, and because it's the 11 presiding deities of the senses. Where does that come from? So here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Brahma's saying, the inhabitants of Braja have also made us fortunate. That is the intention of this verse. What to speak of their great fortune? We have also become fortunate. Who can describe it? We, the 11 deities in charge of their senses headed by Lord Shiva, have become most fortunate, for their senses were the drinkers of Krishna's sweetness. But their senses have tasted the extreme sweetness of the delicious intoxicant of the sound of Krishna's ankle bells on his lotus feet. In this way he expresses his determination to hear, touch, see, taste, smell, sing about, and massage the Lord. Now it goes into the Sankhya topic. There's 5, this is Sankhya. We'll be discussing it tomorrow more completely. But there's the mind, intelligence, and false ego, that's 3. And then there's 10 senses. That's 5 knowledge acquiring, 5 working senses. 10 plus 3 is 13. And two are eliminated. The logic is the anus and genital are not counted amongst them, so he's saying 11 because of their lowly nature. So there's 11, or vulgar is the word used. We 11 sense devatas are experiencing Krishna's sweetness through the 11 senses of the inhabitants of Braja. Here's an explanation. Here's something that should be considered. It's a little delicate, so listen carefully. The sun, moon, devatas, men, animals, and all other entities of the spiritual world are Satchit Ananda. The material sun, moon, devatas, and are imitations of the spiritual counterparts. The devatas of the material realm are especially empowered agents of the devatas of the spiritual realm. And not a concept that we're normally hearing about, but it's being expressed. The material senses cannot act alone. Only by the devata's power can the senses experience material objects. We'll be discussing this tomorrow. Sankhya Philosophy, Canto 3, Chapter 26. But the spiritual senses of the associates of the Lord experience the Lord's form and sound by their own spiritual senses, not those of material devatas. But Brahma, in his enthusiasm, identified his powers over material intellect with the senses of the inhabitants of Braja. That's what's being said here is Brahma is so ecstatic and he's this plunged into the ocean of Braja Prem. He's equating himself at this point with the spiritual counterpart, which he isn't. He's a post personality occupying a post, and not the spiritual counterpart. So we'll discuss it more tomorrow. But there's the senses and the objects of the senses are part of the unfolding of creation, and then there's demigods that enable the senses to experience sense objects. If the demigods don't enable the senses to experience a sense object, then there's no experience. It goes one step further, and that is the demigods can't do their thing without the empowerment of the Supreme. But given the empowerment of the Supreme, demigods are necessary for senses to experience sense objects. But in the case of the Brijbasis, they have spiritual bodies. So they don't require devatas. So the devatas feel themselves fortunate because of the spiritual senses of the Brijbasis. The Brijbasis give them a password, and they can access the experience of the Brijbasis, experiencing the eyes and ears and nose and through their senses, the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. Because I, Brahma, don't have the capacity that they have. But they're very kind. They're experiencing bliss, and they're sharing that bliss with us by allowing us to experience what they're experiencing. The 11 controlling deities of the senses. Furthermore, the material senses experience the enjoyment of the objects of the material world, and the sense devatas, being enablers of the senses, do not enjoy. So supposing you're a worldly person, and you can't blink your eyelid without a demigod sanctioning that, but the demigods aren't experiencing eye blinking, they just give permission, or they have the power to consent. So you taste something, they don't taste, they give the power. But they're not. But with the Brijbasis, because their senses are spiritual, and they're giving their mercy to these controlling deities of the senses, they can experience what the Brijbasis are experiencing. Vishwanath writes, this is the opinion of those knowledgeable of the soul. And Jiva Goswami comments, here's names of the 11 controllers of the senses, or deities of the senses, that we'll go into again tomorrow. But Brahma, Shiva, Chandra, the directions, Vayu, Surya, Varuna, Ashvinis, Agni, Indra, Upendra. These are listed in Canto 3, Chapter 26, which we're going to discuss more tomorrow. Thus, the Devatas mentioned are 11. The deity of the feet, Upendra, is a Ashesh avatar. We are accustomed to say Shakti-avesh avatar, of the Lord's supporting Shakti. This is a special Devata, according to some. Now, he's not listed. Upendra is listed in the Bhagavatam and listed here by Jiva Goswami. But anyway, special amongst the 11. Without the deity of Chitta, Vasudeva, that's the mind or consciousness, the rest were not able to act according to the third canto. And we'll go into this tomorrow. Vasudeva also derives happiness in proximity to Krishna. Like Vasudeva appears in the mind that's in the Vasudeva state. We discussed this previous section. Because the cowherds are eternal spiritual entities of the Lord, it would be impossible for the Devatas with material bodies to act as their sense deities. However, Brahma speaks by identifying himself and the other Devatas with the eternal Devatas situated around the Lord in the spiritual sky. Now, what does that mean? We discussed this earlier. Chapter 13, what Brahma saw was this. The darshan in chapter 13, he saw all these things in their spiritual forms. And Canto 2, Chapter 9, Brahma saw the same thing with spiritual vision of the Supreme Lord surrounded by all these things in their spiritual form. There's a spiritual counterpart. We don't hear a lot about it. There's a spiritual counterpart to all these things, including the Devatas and the objects of the senses. You know, the elements of Sankhya philosophy. There's a spiritual counterpart to what's part of the creation that's not spiritual. It's manifest and then withdrawn. But there's spiritual counterparts. Those deities in the spiritual world are empowered by the Lord, confirmed in Padma Purana. Cites the verse. The heavenly beings such as the Sadhyas, Maruts, Vishvadevas, and their abodes are all eternal in the spiritual world. In the material world, these same Devatas are not eternal. The spiritual counterpart is there in Vaikuntha, or the spiritual realm. Because Vasudeva is eternal in both cases, he acts as a Devata of the senses. So amongst the Devatas of the senses, he's the Devata of the senses. In the material world. We'll hear about that tomorrow also. The demigods can't do their thing without the entrance of Vasudeva. We'll hear about it. It's right in Sankhya text, chapter 26. Since the cowherds are spiritual associates of Krishna, they are endowed with all powers. They do not need sense devatas for their senses. This is indicated in the scriptures describing worship of Krishna. The experience of happiness derived from the cowherd senses by the material devatas of the senses should be rejected. Therefore, the explanation of the verse is as follows. It just goes into, he's speaking as if he's from the spiritual position, but they're just awarding, by their mercy, they're awarding the devatas of the senses the power to experience what they're experiencing. That's what the commentary says. Pretty elevated, huh? In Kramasam Dharma Jiva writes, and this is all I'm going to do. O infallible Lord, what can be said of the great fortune of the people of Vraja? We, the 11 deities of the directions, of course it's not of the senses, are also fortunate. Headed by Shiva, we constantly drink through the cups of our senses the nectar and liquor from your lotus feet. He glorifies the people of Vraja in 5 verses. So far we've gone through 3, 31, 2, and 3. And Brahma's position amongst the created beings is now becoming a little more clear. I mean, we commonly just ask, kids in our Sunday school, when you hear about Brahma, what do you know? What do you think of? One little boy said he has a lotus flower, and he has chanting beads, and he has the Vedas. He has 4 heads. He appears on a lotus flower. He's the direct-born son of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is the head of our sampradaya. He originally receives all transcendental knowledge. He's the grandfather of all living entities. And these are things that we know in the worldly sense. But here is, the otherworldly sense. He has an understanding of the original form of Krishna that our sampradaya is enriched with, particularly through the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to understand the very, very special position of Braja Prem, the special position of Krishna in Vrindavan. And these verses, the concluding portion that we're going through, it goes to text 61, so there's 11 verses that are speaking about the great fortune of the residents of Vrindavan in very, very vivid terms. But in addition to being the creator of the universe, he has a function in the functioning of the universe as he's the demigod in charge of intelligence. Because in the Sankhya system, intelligence is one of the items. And he's the demigod. Our intelligence doesn't work without the power invested by Brahma. Let's just say, somebody, a little exploring in this topic. Supposing somebody has, they're deaf, they can't hear. Now, one explanation could be the sense organ, is broken or defective or something. One idea might be put in another organ, put in another eyeball, put in another nose or something. Another picture, the Sankhya picture, is the power of the sense has been withdrawn. And, under the control of some demigod, the power of sense is withdrawn. Or the power of sight is withdrawn. The eyeball may be just fine. No, it could be the other way. It could be like a machine part. If your alternator is bad, you just take the alternator out, put another alternator in, and boom, off you go. The headlight is broken, so you put another headlight in, and so off you go. You can now have light. But the Sankhya system allows for yet another, besides, the sense organ is now broken or defective. It's the power of sense behind the sense organ, and behind that is the demigod, and behind that is Vasudeva, or Supersoul, the personality of Godhead, who's the Deva of the Devas that are controlling the senses. It's a very different picture. And then that's, for conditioned souls, so demigods have that function. And he, along with this particular verse 33 is stating, we, the 11 presiding deities of the various senses, headed by Lord Shiva, are most fortunate because the senses of these devotees of Vrindavan are the cups through which we repeatedly drink the nectarian intoxicating beverage of the honey of your lotus feet. The residents of Braja are being appreciated as having spiritual forms. And we'll hear more tomorrow, that there's a very nice discussion in Brihat Bhagavatamrita about how the residents of Vrindavan use these senses, the 11 senses. Not with the sanction of the presiding deity of the senses, just they're invested with prema, and their senses are so enlivened that they fully dedicate everything, all of their senses and everything, to Krishna, and they experience the bliss of Krishna through that gift of Braja Prem that's been gifted upon them, and therefore Brahma is eager for that. The commentary is saying he's not feeling qualified to even pray for becoming one of those residents, but at least being in service to those residents, and because they're being very kind and giving us this intoxicating beverage of honey that they're experiencing through their dedicated senses. It's a very, very special feature, the residents of Vrindavan. I just, shortly I'll be sending out, just end with this, shortly I'll be sending out, did a little research today on the concept of living entities who are eternal associates of Krishna, how it's possible for them to be simultaneously in different places. And it comes up in, when Gopakumar goes to Dwarka, he's really surprised, because there's Narada. I see you everywhere. You're there, you're here, you're here. And Narada says, you're always very curious. But, maybe you don't remember that I've already explained this to you, but you're so curious, I'll explain it to you again. Persons like myself, or Hanuman, or Garuda, or over here, Uddhava, as servants of the personality of Godhead, they can manifest themselves simultaneously in different places by their expansions, which is mind-blowing. But it's not like Narada was here, Narada was there, Narada's there. It's Narada's expansion, and Narada's fully conscious of what his expansion over there and over and over. It doesn't give how that happens, but the explanation is, as the Lord expands himself, he expands his devotees. And specifically then reference is made to chapter 13 of Canto 10. There's calves and cowherd boys in a cave, and there's calves and cowherd boys before Brahma. And then those calves and cowherd boys go home to their homes, and their mothers don't recognize the difference, but it's Krishna. But what about the ones that are in the cave? It's Satchidananda forms also. So what is when one has spiritual form, Swarup, that's Krishna's potency. That's the living entity that's not covered. We're living entities that are covered. And living entities have original pure consciousness, but it's covered. And we're trying to remove the covering, get free from the entanglement with the complexity of the covering. But the residents of Vrindavan are completely free from that entanglement. So, honoring the residents of Vrindavan and wishing to become associated with them, that's Braja Prem. And that's what's being revealed by Brahma. And so he's not feeling qualified. And that's something that the Gopakumar has reached Dwarka, and he's satisfied but not satisfied because it's not Madan Gopal. So Narada and Uddhava decide, let's sit him down, get him ready, because he has this nature that he wants to be with Madan Gopal. And he just, it's just natural for him. And you and I, Narada and Uddhava, we don't have the qualification that he has. Although he's a little boy, cowherd boy, we are learned and this and that, but we don't have the qualification that he has. And that qualification primarily is this natural attraction for Madan Gopal in the mood of Braja. Although he's recognizing Krishna in Dwarka and Narayan in Vaikuntha and Ram in Ayodhya, he's feeling bliss, but it's just not, the natural fulfillment isn't there. And so in the commentary we're getting this Ragatmika Vatsalya Prem personalities and Ragatmika Sakya Prem, and we're being introduced to associates of Krishna in the spiritual world and how fortunate they are. And we've become fortunate because of their good fortune. Shiva, Brahma, and the other 9 presiding deities of the various, how significant of a post is that? But they're made fortunate by the residents of Vrindavan. Really fascinating. It's a whole other worldview. The Bhagavad picture. So let's see if there's some discussion. Anything? Look like you have something.
As you said, it's completely different world, very difficult to comprehend. But one question I had where you said the intelligence, Devata, Brahma. Is it our material intelligence that Brahma is controlling?
He's the presiding deity of. And in Sankhya system, it's material intelligence. He's not the presiding deity of spiritual intelligence. He's the presiding deity of material intelligence.
Then how is the super soul and this intelligence?
It comes direct. There's no indirect, it's direct. The Dhammi Bodhi Yogam Tam. Super soul, direct. No broker.
No, my question there, Maharaj, is yes, super soul is direct, but how does this intelligence and the super soul work together?
Super soul empowers Brahma to do what Brahma does. And one of the things that Brahma does is he's the presiding deity of that sense, intelligence. And the other senses and the other, the other 10 senses. Okay? He's in charge. He's the Deva of the Devas. He's the Devata of the Devatas who are in charge of the senses. He's Parameshwara of the Ishwaras.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Continuing my next question. So when Krishna imparted the knowledge to Brahma,
Yeah.
he imparted the spiritual knowledge.
Yes, he did.
So when Brahma is the preceding deity of material intelligence,
Well, that was one of, he had, there's several functions.
okay,
He's in charge of the creation mode. He's in charge of material intelligence. He's presiding deity of that sense. He's the, so he's the giver of the Vedas. He's an important person. He's the forefather of all living entities. He's got a lot of functions. He's got a lot of hats.
so should I think that because Krishna imparted the spiritual intelligence, he has that capacity to be
Yes.
the presiding deity of these things?
Well,
Is it?
it's more than that. Yes, and more than that. Because there may be persons that have spiritual intelligence, but their function is not the function of controlling one of the senses. It's another empowerment in addition to a spiritual intelligence. Say it the other way around. In order to be controller of the senses, you have to have spiritual intelligence. But you may have spiritual intelligence, you're not a controller of the senses. Follow?
Yeah.
Okay?
You need to have spiritual intelligence
To do what he's doing. But all of those that have spiritual intelligence, they don't have the same function. So it's an additional empowerment that Krishna has given him. And he's given other empowerments too. Be in charge of creating a universe. Gosh. Of course, it requires intelligence. But not that people all have intelligence. Go build universes. Okay?
I have a question, and this is my own question. I was when you put the first slide where Brahma, Krishna is saying that now you are my devotee. What is your desire?
Yeah.
So I was stuck there.
Uh-oh.
I heard Maharaj so many times that when we become pure devotees, that person, the devotee is always in harmony with Lord. He doesn't have any
Material
desires.
desire. No material desire.
No material.
No material desire.
So here, Krishna is asking Brahma, what is your material desire?
No.
Spiritual.
What is any desire? What do you desire? And he said, no material desire, please. I only want the spiritual one.
Okay, so
desire is concomitant with the soul. Prabhupada would speak like this. We're not dead stones. Dead stones don't have desire. We don't say desire less. No desire. Become a stone. Desire in relation to Krishna. That's the bhakti position. That's the Vaikuntha position. That's the spiritual alive position.
I was thinking Krishna is again alluring the devotee. What is your desire?
Well, he's checking him out.
Yeah, that's why Krishna does that.
Well, why not?
He's doing it. With desires.
He's doing it right now. Right now. What do you want?
Oh.
Well, I got these desires and those desires. Okay. I mean, you have children, so what do you want? And they don't want to play mridanga. Okay. Right? So as you do, Krishna does. Or as Krishna does, you do. He doesn't interfere. He knows what we want, and, he may not permit.
Just checking.
Yeah, he may say, I'm sorry, you can't go, it's a coronavirus, no, you can't go out with your buddies. But there's some things you draw some lines. So Krishna draws some lines. Sorry, you're not eligible for becoming a millionaire. You're eligible for what you're eligible for. So there's boundaries, not unfettered, your desires in Krishna is just a cornucopia that meant you fulfill your order supply. But even in the present moment, what would you like?
I see consistency in Krishna asking this question to devotee. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, I don't want anything. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want. He is forcing. So I see very consistency in Krishna to find out what this devotee wants.
Well, Krishna knows he just wants you to be honest with him and honest with yourself. So Brahma, he knows what Brahma wants. He just wants to be his devotee, so he says it.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very personal. Very personal. And part of what he's feeling, we heard, he doesn't feel qualified to say, I want to become a Brijbasi. He doesn't feel qualified to ask that. But let me serve them. Let me glorify them. Let me be a devotee that's glorifying the devotees. I think I'd like to do that. Okay. You're eligible for that one. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, I was thinking that a lot of online viewers maybe have time we can play the video again.
There's not a lot of questions?
Only one or two.
Let's see. Go ahead.
Shamakun Prabhu's question. To follow in the footsteps of Gopakumar, to establish a relationship with Braja Krishna, do we need to do both of the below? 1. Chant carefully. And 2. In a mood of eagerness, gradually be attracted to Krishna's Braja pastimes by reading and hearing those pastimes. Or is chanting alone is sufficient?
Well, we do both. I mean, chanting within chant. We discussed this morning. I don't mind discussing it again. From chanting, everything is accessible. Doesn't mean don't do anything else. Like just put everything else in a garbage can somewhere, and just do chanting, because within chanting is everything. But from chanting comes many things, and along with chanting, there's hearing of the name, form, qualities, pastime. So that's encouraged. That arises from chanting, wanting to have association and appreciate those that have been absorbed in that glorification of Krishna and wanting to be in service to him. So what's the activities of those who have really matured in that service to him? It just follows. So it's not one versus the other. Is it sufficient just to chant? If the answer is yes, then it's yes, but. Because when you chant, then you want to do those other things. So they're resting on chanting, but other things flow from chanting. Or side by side, Prabhupada's explanation is the two tracks of a train, making the heart cleansed, and the guidance of our activity. So the guidance of activity is in part by those who are properly guided. And how do they conduct their lives? What's the standards of what's to be done, and so forth. So don't make it an either or kind of thing. We've been given the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and with an immense sacrifice and effort to provide it for us, and we've been given the holy name, so don't make it either or.
This is Chandana Mataji's question. Why, in spite of Krishna being Bhagavan Swayam, it appears to all, even to the Brajavasis, that Vishnu is the supreme?
Well, because the Brajabasi love is like that. They don't see Krishna as divinity, but they have a sense of divinity. So Narayan is their deity or Vishnu is their deity, and that's divinity for them. Because of their type of love. They don't see Krishna like that.
This is from Anu Mataji. There are a few different questions in this one question.
Okay, take them one at a time. It'll be easier for me.
When we perceive ourselves as the body, we have the fear or illusion,
Yes.
the snake and rope metaphor. But what if it's not the rope and really a snake? How do we react when the fear is genuine?
When the fear is legitimate.
Yeah.
How do you react? You step away from the snake. You take precaution. Prabhupada told the story. Once at the headquarters of Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada happened to be visiting one time, and there was a lot of Bengali noise over there because there was a cobra making a lot of noise, and Bhaktisiddhanta came to the veranda of his residence and saw what they were doing and found out it was a cobra, and he said, "Kill it. You find out it's a snake, you kill it." And Prabhupada said, "I was very surprised because I thought sadhus don't instruct to kill things." So he was a little privately confused and disturbed until he read from Srimad Bhagavatam when Prahlad Maharaj speaks that saintly people, they derive contentment when a scorpion or poisonous serpent is killed. And meaning, when there's somebody that's an entity, in this case a snake or a scorpion, that without being provoked, they just strike and they cause death. And that's very dangerous, and it should be put to death. It's dharmic to put it to death. It's like striking, death blow. The penalty is death. So when there's real danger, when it's coronavirus, you take precaution. You don't go mess because it's deadly. You're appropriately cautious. Not fearful, but you're appropriately cautious. You take needful steps.
And the follow-up question for this is, how can we find peace when there is so much suffering and anxiety going around me? How can I find peace? She's a nurse. She's working in a hospital. So she, when I see people dying left and right, extreme grief and fear and everything happens. How do I remember Krishna in such an overwhelming situation?
Well, you have to have connection with Krishna, otherwise it's nothing but despair. So if you have connection with Krishna, you see the misfortune of persons who have taken birth and are going through the cycle of birth and death, and in between there's misery. And how unfortunate, not just there's death all around you, but there's death all around you in the world. Prabhupada's statement is the death rate is 100%. Everyone born dies. So the misfortune, the person who has the Krishna connection sees how unfortunate that persons have taken birth in this world because of their turning their attention away from Krishna. What can I do as a nurse or whatever one's occupation or situation to turn attention again to Krishna so they don't have to take birth again, whether they die in the hospital, they die however they die. And then all the other miseries that go along with forgetfulness of Krishna and material consciousness. So the answer to the question is, make your Krishna connection strong. Now it's difficult in the midst of a crisis situation to cultivate strong consciousness, but when you're on the other side of this, you know where to invest your discretionary time in strengthening your Krishna connection. And as best you can during this period of time, stay connected, associate with those that are connected. There are other medical practitioners that I know, that's what they're doing. They're associating with other medical practitioners who are going through that same, but there's little time to do it because it's a crisis situation for certain people in the medical profession. Now, some people in the surgery profession, they're not doing surgeries because everybody that's available is over there doing a crisis thing. So they're kind of like, okay, crisis-wise. Anyway, it depends on different occupational situations are different. And like Prabhupada describes in Bhagavad Gita, there's routine work, there's emergency work, and there's preferred work. So if you have discretionary time, you can do discretionary things. You must do your routine work, and then there's emergency. So now it's emergency time. You go into the emergency mode, which requires strong Krishna connection. And then when you, on the other side of it, you make strong Krishna connection, stronger with your discretionary time. What happens is, after a crisis situation, everybody's, very spiritual for a while. And then after some time, it becomes, business as usual. It becomes very relaxed, and the senses are looking around for sense objects to enjoy, not like preparing for eternal life. So learn from this experience, don't become complacent on the other side.
Maharaj, I'm not talking about Corona, but in general, when you watch the world around, there is a lot of suffering.
A lot of suffering.
A lot of suffering going on. So, a person who has a softer heart, let's say you saw something that a small child is having great suffering going on with whatever life they have, or situation they are in. So you really want to do something about it. But we know that the problem is never ending, but understanding the logistics, this is a place of suffering and it is very temporary. But if you still want to do something, as you said, we need to keep Krishna in the center, but if you want to do something, what would be the best way to, if you're not in direct contact with this person?
It depends. That's an important element. If you're not in direct contact with the person,
Right.
then it's remote. So the best thing, whatever it is that you do as a devotee, make sure there's an element of consciousness elevation. Something that Vyasadeva understood was misfortune, it's the age of Kali coming, I got to do something. Now he was a literary person, so he did a literary something. And we're not, going to be able to compile Vedas. We don't have that capacity. But with faith in the propagation of that sound vibration of what's in the Vedas and the holy name and so forth, it can bring about a transformation and elevation of consciousness of society in general, And if some of that can be directed towards a particular individual, a child or whatever, and there are ways to do that. I mean, not easy, but there are ways to do that. But it's remotely. A lot. So a particular situation that's you may be meditating upon, or someone may come across your life next week, next month. How to do something about the misfortune that people are in, or a particular person that's in, and it's remote. The best method is consciousness elevation, and however you can touch the life of that particular person depends. That particular person may not want their life touched by consciousness elevation. They're looking for a material solution, and if people don't, anyway, so it's not easy. When consciousness is low, even a material solution is provided, it doesn't necessarily make the suffering go away. Or, it's not enough, I want more, or something like that. Just an example that's coming to mind is something that's remote. One of my visits to China, I was introduced to a millionaire. The millionaire wanted. I asked, the first question I asked is, why did you want to meet me? What is it? What's your need? What do you want from me? And they said, well, I find great happiness in doing charitable work, and you're a spiritual person, so you may have some insight how I can become more capable of doing charitable work. Get more money so I can do more charitable work. And she went off describing she and another friend recently gave a very large donation to a charity, to an orphanage. And then she explained what we have learned. Sure enough, it happened. When we were ready, we had this ceremony of giving, and they wanted more. It wasn't enough. So we were really clear, that's it, don't ask for more. And they asked for more anyways, but they were just content to... It's dushparena analena cha. It burns like fire, it never is enough. Whatever you do to help somebody that's in an unfortunate situation, it's never, there's gratitude, but then it fades, and then I need something more, some better, or something, because it's not satisfying. Have you seen the Shel Silverstein, The Giving Tree? She'll share it with you. And one of the lessons of the Giving Tree is it's never enough. Never enough. Never. And that is, if you just give on the material side, it's not fulfilling. You haven't done your job if you're just giving on the material side. The intent can be, super fantastic, caring, sacrificing, giving, etc. It's never, because it doesn't touch the need. And you're gifted as a devotee that you understand that behind that misfortune, there's something that's just like, well, it's their karma. So you can't change their karma, but you can elevate consciousness. And that's something that our founder Acharya did with people that were very unfortunate people. Or they may have been born in good families, but they didn't want it. And so they became, degraded people in various ways. So he did consciousness transformation. And it grew and it grew. It started on a small scale, but you have to start somewhere, and you do consciousness transformation. That we're little. We're not Prabhupada. We can do what we can do. we can do with others, with our like-minded persons that like to do what we can do.
Visalaksha Prabhu's question. What are the effective and natural ways to engage the intelligence in the process of bhakti at the midst of turbulent mind?
Well, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that one who studies this sacred conversation is worshipping me with his intelligence. So that's a really good way to engage intelligence. Study Krishna's sacred conversation. And that will purify the mind and purify the intelligence, elevate the intelligence, so that one can be on a different platform than disturbed.
This is Radha Vallabha Prabhu. Similar to Brahma, is it correct understanding that intelligence of spiritual master is fully connected with super soul or lordships in every instruction?
That's ideal. And that's the ideal situation. And supposing one has a spiritual master that's not an Uttama Adhikari, but is a strict follower of the Uttama Adhikari, and then Krishna from within, if the bullseye of the target isn't hit, Krishna will correct. So the main qualification then is being a strict follower, not necessarily they've got a hot line to Super Soul with everything they say and do. Okay?
This is Giri Prabhu. After watching the Hare Krishna movie and today listening to Rajavasi pastimes, can we relate Srila Prabhupada and his devotees' initial challenges as similar to Krishna and the gopis?
Gosh, it's a little different. Gopis are on another platform than, the initial difficulties of the Hare Krishna movement that Prabhupada faced. But, with further purification, sure. Much more purification. Go ahead.
This is Hema Suryavanshi Mataji. I would like clarification that connection with Krishna, does it mean remembering him somehow, maybe through prayer or chanting or hearing? What does connection with Krishna mean?
Well, the other senses follow the mind. The mind leads the other senses. So that's the beginning, is manmana, or mamanusmarayudhyacha, thinking of Krishna and engaging in prescribed duty. Then that's the other senses, follows the mind. But the connection with Krishna is more than just the mind and senses. It's something even more fundamental. That's, the soul's desire to be in relation with Krishna. That's what drives the mind and senses. Bhakti. So connection is from the heart, or the hankering of the soul to be in relationship with Krishna. And then the mind and the senses go.
This is Surabhi Mataji. Before Shukadev Goswami learned Srimad Bhagavatam from his father Vyasadeva, he was an impersonalist. Before 4 Kumaras smelled the fragrance of Tulsi offered to the lotus feet of Lord Narayana, they were also impersonalists. So my question is...
Who was the second one?
Kumaras.
Kumaras, okay.
So my question is that what's the difference between impersonal conception of Shukadev Goswami and that of 4 Kumaras had had before, and that of the Mayavadis now.
Okay. Just a little editing of Surabhi's words. The two were not Mayavadis or impersonalists, they were Brahmavadis. The distinction is they had realization of Brahman. And the term impersonalist is very, broad. It's in a technical sense, it means one who has realized Brahman, but in a more general sense, it means one who denies the personal existence of God. The term impersonalist carries the connotation of denying the personal existence of God. And the Kumaras weren't denying the personal existence of God. As soon as they smelled the fragrance of the tulsi and sandalwood anointing Lord Narayan's feet coming through the air, they boom, they became transformed into devotees. They weren't averse to the personal feature of God. That's an impersonalist. And Mayavadis are a certain, brand of impersonalists. It's a philosophical. The connotation of Mayavadi is one who says Brahman is covered by Maya. That's a Mayavadi. And and with it comes some other word jugglery. There's no such thing as of living entity or Paramatma. There's no Jiva, there's no Paramatma, all there is Brahman. It's philosophical, it's word jugglery. There's no distinction Jiva Paramatma or Jiva Bhagavan, it's just Brahman. And what's anything else is just Brahman is covered. And Brahman is covered as illusion, so all there is Brahman. It's just like a philosophical, round and around, word jugglery. So the terms have different connotations. So one should use the terms carefully. Now the difference between what the four Kumaras and Shukadev Goswami had as realization, there's no information. Are there distinctions between one who realizes Brahman and another who realizes Brahman? That's an interesting question that I've never heard any discussion about. But they had realization of Brahman, the Brahman feature of the Supreme. And as soon as there was contact with the Bhagavan feature of the Supreme, they were enthusiastic. They were immediately bhaktas. Immediately. No long, well, let me think it over. Immediately. And impersonalist has its connotation and Mayavadi has its connotation.
This is Sri Radhika Mataji's question. Gopakumar's journey is heart-melting. I found it intriguing that Narada and Uddhava are glorifying Gopakumar as more elevated than themselves. Of course, devotees are naturally humble. I request you to please elaborate some more on Gopakumar's special qualities because he is my hero.
Well, the special quality, they were very specific. It's been in the discussions about Govardhan, or the Brijbasi, the special position of the Brijbasis is they have the word that's used in the English translation is they have a natural affection for Krishna. Or in Gopakumar's, a natural affection for Madan Gopal. There's a particular name of Krishna in Vrindavan, Madan Gopal. It's just natural, and it's unstoppable. It's insurmountable. It's ubiquitous. It's That's the special feature of Gopakumar. That Uddhava and Narada say, we appreciate those that have that, but we don't have that. Like Gopakumar has it. So in fact, that's an exalted feature that they're not yet eligible for. Now we know that Uddhava had the desire to get dust from the feet of the gopis, but he felt they would be too shy and embarrassed if he asked for dust from their feet, so he underwent austerities to become a blade of grass to take birth in Vrindavan, so the dust from the feet of the gopis would fall upon his grass body, and he would be benedicted by dust from their feet. It was how much he, Uddhava, exalted Uddhava, was appreciating the gopis, wishing to become a dust piece, a blade of grass. So the specialness, uniqueness of Gopakumar is like the resident of Vrindavan. He was a resident of Vrindavan in consciousness. So we discussed this more than once in that morning section about the residents of Vrindavan. And that is, Rupa Goswami gives us a path, the path to become filled with Braja Prem, like the residents of Vrindavan and like Gopakumar. It's right in Nectar Devotion.
This is Vishwa Prabhu. How to see Krishna with material eyes?
In his deity form. And then so you may become purified to see him with spiritual eyes.
This is Atulya Mataji. Is there any description of Lord Brahma gaining knowledge to create material universe from Krishna, or the knowledge came from the spiritual knowledge, that is devotional service and his tapa?
There's not any detailed description of his getting the knowledge how to create the universe. It was imparted to him, that's all that's said. In Canto 2, Chapter 9, I think it's verse 32, Vishnu says to Brahma, you will understand everything. Now, I don't know if that's specific, it's understand everything about me, I can't remember, or everything that you need to know, just, its knowledge will awaken within your heart. So he didn't like study books or go to school, he just had knowledge awakened within his heart. That's how it happened, as far as I understand. How the universe that's a lot of information. But your heart shall be empowered to know all these things. Okay? Anything over here? Anything else?
I can extend that question, Maharaj. So when you have spiritual knowledge, will that benefit you to get material knowledge? Like in case of Brahma?
It depends. Material knowledge will not necessarily assist you to become proficient in spiritual knowledge, or material knowledge. Spiritual knowledge will not, of necessity, that is to say, if you need to know something, Krishna will help you. But if you don't need to know something, you don't become a walking encyclopedia. You follow? Supposing somebody doesn't know how to cook for Krishna, but they have a desire, the spiritual intelligence has become awakened, vyavasayat mika bodhi ekeha kuranandana, and part of a way that I could serve Krishna, its appropriate given circumstance, is to cook for Krishna. So Krishna will give intelligence how to cook for Krishna. Now one can look at that as, well, that's material intelligence. But one can also look at it as spiritual intelligence, because the gopis cook for Krishna. They don't have material intelligence. So it's, it's more the mood of the service. Kids like to play music and kirtan. So it takes some practice to learn how to become proficient in mridanga playing and harmonium playing and singing nicely and even keeping rhythm with kartals. Some people just like it's easy, and some people they can't do it even if they try. But the ability can come from Krishna. Right? So for service, my main response is, in service to Krishna, then Krishna can give intelligence to do anything. But then it's not exactly material intelligence. If you're doing something in service to Krishna, it becomes spiritual. Okay? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.